Tell me which of Wiley and Rebecca's children you are descended from.
Well, my daddy was Dave.
Well,
I'm little David.
What a coincidence. So your dad was David. He was born in Gatlinburg, right?
I was too.
Were you?
I was one of the last people born in Gatlinburg.
Wiley and Rebecca's children, there were 3 born in Gatlinburg, and David was one of them. I have a picture of David in the Navy. Is that the service he went to?
Yeah,
well, you have a sister named Diane, right?
I do.
And are there other brothers and sisters of David's?
I have one other sister, Debbie. She's out in Arkansas.
Okay.
Retired architect.
Is that right? So Wiley is somebody that's in your past, and you had a sort of a colorful high school time, didn't you?
Very.
Tell us about you and Wiley and that devil drink called moonshine.
Well, Wiley, unfortunately, I didn't get to really know. I was about a year and a half old when he died. But
1954.
I somehow picked up his wild card when he laid it down. Either that or Casey picked it up, and I picked it up from Casey.
Yeah, I think Casey had it before you.
Casey had it for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, Casey did a few interesting things. Made a little moonshine and bought a little and sold a little, and I worked with him on a little. And people should have noticed that I was driving a nice Chevelle instead of a worn-out old Ford. What can you say? It was the times. Vietnam War was going on. If your kids survived high school, then you had to pray they'd survive the war. And I survived both.
Where did Casey make his moonshine? Or import it, or however he did it?
He got a little out of Clark County when he wasn't inclined to make it himself. And then he'd basically pass it as his own. And he made a little as well. There was a little place, Caton's Chapel, almost to English Mountain.
Yeah.
That I don't know if he borrowed it or what.
The moonshine still?
The still or the property.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he owned either one.
He probably borrowed it.
And he made a little, and I took care of distribution.
You were in high school at the time. About what year? In high school?
69, 70.
So y'all were buddies, and he said one day, David, how about...
We're family, and I was already going in and out of bars.
Oh, you were doing it as family.
We were family.
Right. He trusted you.
I looked older than I was, and I actually sound like a kid these days. And
Good for you.
Sounded like an adult when I was young.
There you go.
So I was in and out of bars when I was 16, so he didn't do the math.
So you took the moonshine to sell it to whom?
Well, he had the connections, and I just did the driving, but he eventually ran some down in Chicago, and they were really hot for the stuff. It really amused me because I know they make it up there too, but it was just some kind of
mystique, aura.
Yeah, they thought it was special somehow, so they were willing to pay too much for it, and we were willing to take the money.
So you were primarily selling to others, not to the high school people?
Oh, never to high school.
Oh, I thought you were selling it to the high schoolers.
Only once did a student friend of mine drink some of it, and he ended up being removed from class in the middle of the day because he was drunk.
On Casey's moonshine?
Yeah.
Okay, so you took it to different places, one being Chicago, and you're a smart fella, so you discovered something. What was that?
I know what you're I know what you're leading to. Yeah, I got annoyed driving that long drive back with the trunk empty and the air shocks deflated, and got a good idea. We had all these folks migrating south to retire that complained that they couldn't get ricotta cheese and they couldn't get Italian sausage and so many other things in East Tennessee. And light bulb went on in my head. I started filling my trunk up before I left Chicago with kosher meats and good cheeses and such, and brought them back here. And I made more money on my legitimate trade than my illegitimate trade.
That's funny.
Literally.
And what was the car you were driving then, did you say?
Oh, it was your traditional moonshiner's runner's car, you know, gray and lights all half masked off, and old car. No, it wasn't a gray ghost at all. It was a '69 cherry red 396 Chevelle with rather noisy exhaust, and I got pulled over 3 times, loaded, driving it. And
while you had moonshine in it?
Yeah.
Oh.
While the trunk was
Were you
full.
scared?
The first time.
Yeah.
But the cop that pulled me over just wanted to see the car. I've been wanting to buy one of these. He literally pulled me over just to get a look at the car. Didn't look in the trunk. Nothing. And then it happened 2 more times. And then the poor car, I never told you this, Luke. The poor car, I was driving down Kingston Pike through Sequoia Hills in traffic, stopped for a light. The lady behind me was brushing her hair. Bam. Turned that Chevelle into a Nova. Ignominious end.
Yeah, poor Chevelle.
What can you say?
Well, did you have any close calls with getting caught while hauling moonshine?
No.
Did you ever drink any of it yourself?
Oh hell yeah! I even made it myself.
That was the side bonus for hauling it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I did start a little early. One thing you don't know about our generation, well maybe you do, we grew up under the shadow of Vietnam. We all went through high school knowing that as soon as we got out we were subject to the draft. And yes, we lived a little bit wilder. And I lost more friends in high school than I did in Vietnam. I lost 6 friends in high school, all in car accidents. All involved drinking, all involved Dodge products, you know, Roadrunner, Challenger, Charger, so forth. Cars weren't made for mountain roads. That Chevelle, hunker down to the ground, just keep on going.
Have you got any little stories or tidbits or memories directly of Wiley's heritage, of his stories, or anything about him or Rebecca?
I wish that I did.
You knew Rebecca. You knew Rebecca.
Yes, but there were so many of us grandkids, and
she probably didn't know which one you were.
It was about the size of it.
Yeah.
And we were always around the house. You couldn't go to her house. There weren't 4 or 5 of us there. So it was just a little flock of us all the time.
And do you remember the Wiley shop?
I remember the shop.
Was that after Wiley died?
It went on for a while after. I don't know how long. But
yeah, I often wondered about that.
they kept it going.
So
the little bridge across to the cabins on the other side.
And that was on the right-hand side of the Wiley shop, right?
Yep.
Went over to the cabins. Did they rent the cabins, or they were somebody else's cabins?
Well, they definitely rented them. I don't know if they rented them for somebody else.
I'd never heard them say that they did, so I wondered.
Somebody built the swinging bridge in the cabins, but I've never had it explained to me what the connection really was.
And there was a little space to the left of the Wiley shop where they played music. Did you ever experience any of that?
Yeah, Harv and a couple of other brothers.
Jim Ball.
They did traditional folk and country. And none of this Nashville sound. They didn't need amplifiers. They had deep enough and loud enough voices.
Belted it out, eh?
They just belted it out.
About how deep was that space?
Tiny.
Huh?
Tiny.
Tiny.
Let's see. Probably no more than 30 feet by 50 maybe.
Okay.
Small.
And it had
make a good
benches
size
for
house.
people to come and sit on, right?
Yep.
To watch the show. Okay.
And they'd hear the music right from the street.
Yeah. Come and see what was going on. I have the impression that the music at Wiley Shop was one of the first of that kind of thing. That he sort of pioneered having a show to draw in people is my impression. Do you have any thought or knowledge of that?
I don't know if it was the first, but it was certainly one of the few originals.
Yes.
There were a lot of others that came along after that did a hodgepodge of music. It wasn't really that much local music.
This is more of the local, pure.
What they did was local mountain music, not Nashville, not Atlanta.
Right, right.
It was entirely, well, for lack of a better term for it, hillbilly music.
Hillbilly music, yeah. Mountain music.
I've always been proud of that term, whereas some folks think it's derogatory. Hillbilly.
Yeah. Well, what can you end with that'll help us to remember the Oakley heritage that you have?
Well, Wiley was spirited. Casey was spirited. Somehow I ended up being one of the more spirited ones. And I've got a son and a daughter that are carrying on the tradition. So the Oakley genes are carrying on.
Plus, there's that hiking gene, right?
10 to 14 miles a day, and I'm 71 years old.
Where do you start out from? Where's your home now?
I live I'm out in the hills beyond West Hills, Knoxville.
Oh, way out there.
Almost to Oak Ridge.
So where do you hike? Do you come here, or?
I come to the mountains, the Smokies. I go to the Big South Fork. Once a year I try to get out west. I've got some friends out there I spend a couple of weeks with. Last year did 3 10s and a couple of 12s, and we were looking at some 14s. I know that doesn't make sense. That's 1,000 feet tall mountains. And our Smokies are 6,600 feet. So these are 2 times taller than Mount LeConte. And happily, 71 years old, I did fine.
Excellent.
I had to breathe a little more often, though.
Oh, I'll bet. Especially out west where they're a little thinner.
They're a little thinner up there.
Do you think you've hiked most of the trails that Wiley hiked?
I would say there are a few that I missed. Because, like him, I tended to go off trail at times, and I have no idea what his off trails were. I can guess that maybe 1 or 2 of them I found by coincidence, but up this way, in fact.
Well, a lot of the trails were ones that were there before the park established official trails, like to the Alum Cave.
Oh, Alum Cave Bluff. I prefer to call it Alum Bluff because it's not truly a cave.
That's what they say.
It's a bluff.
Yeah.
And that trail is a hodgepodge of old and new.
That's what I understand.
It's not really an old trail per se. The Huffs and some other folks opened up some of the existing trails up there, the old Indian trails, hunting trails and such. And the mountains are full of them. I used to know a handful of them that aren't on any map, but they were there.
Well, what I read was that when they were laying out the trails, they did not have the current trail up to Mount LeConte through Alum Cave Bluff decided. And Wiley took them to the Arch Rock because his grandfather had told him about it, so he knew it. And so he showed them where it was, and as a result, they did make that a part of the trail.
Brave enough to go the rest of the way.
Yeah, there you go.
I actually worked on that trail one summer.
As a CC?
Well, it might as well have been CC. It was a modern version of it. They hired a bunch of kids from high schools in Knoxville and got some of those local boys to work with them. The first thing we did when we got to LeConte was build a cabin. Because
the very first lodge, you mean?
No, not the first. The first thing we did was build our own lodging. And that building is now it's a bigger
place
building.
Where they eat?
It's now the office and supply and so forth for the current lodge. But we built that so we'd have a roof over our heads for the summer. So we spent the first month building the roof over our own heads. And then we hiked down Alum to almost to the bluff and rebuilt that section of trail. Carried a gasoline-powered jackhammer and dynamite and caps and a little spin top detonator for them. And we drilled holes. We went bang. We cut the trail open a little bit more because it had degenerated to just a narrow track. 200 feet down. It's kind of unnerving to only have a foot or so. And we knocked it back out to about 3 or 4 feet. It was a fun summer.
Yeah, it was indeed.
Funny story.
Yeah.
This has got to get in here. You'll love this. On Friday, we would get off. You know, we'd stay on the mountain all week long. We did a 5-day week, just like city folks. And on Friday, we'd get off a little bit early. They'd allow us a couple hours to get down the mountain. Well, a couple of buddies of mine and I were quite athletic, and we had girlfriends that were going to pick us up. We weren't going to have to ride in with a truckload of sweaty, smelly fellows we'd spent the week with. And we would run down the mountain. We'd leave the boots up on top and put on our tennis shoes and race each other down the mountain. We could get to the parking lot in 45 minutes. But it did have a little bit of a drawback to it. We got down to what we called switchback. Trail literally goes across the mountain and zigzags back.
Is that right before the bluff?
Yes, it's between the bluff and the cliff face where all the cables are and where we had to do all the blasting. We got to that cutback, that zigzag, made the turn, and I was out front, and I came right around the turn, and here's a bear just waddling down the trail. And I'm going downhill on loose gravelly surface at top speed, best I could manage without flying off the trail. So I got no place to go. And I was young, the brain was quick enough. I realized I can either go off and get torn up, or I can go to the right and bounce off the wall and land on the bear, or I can run into the bear, or if I try real hard, I can kick with both feet, go airborne, and go over the bear. And I did.
Whoa, I can see it.
Quite successfully. I completely cleared the bear. Of course, the bear noticed, what kind of critter is this?
Yes.
And
flying squirrel.
Really big flying squirrel. Starts looking around, sticks his head up. Well, the next guy behind me comes around. The bear's up on his hind legs, sniffing the air and trying to figure out that bird that just flew by, and just, bam, slammed right into him.
Oh my gosh.
The bear got knocked off the trail. The boy that hit him was about 230 pounds, big boy. And of course, he swears to this day that I should have been able to warn him somehow. I was still trying to get my breath.
Right. You were flying burrito.
And we didn't have to worry about that bear ever again, because we heard him knocking down trees running away. That bear never went near people again.
Thank you, David. That's a good way to end. Appreciate it.
It sounds crazy, but you sit down with people, you're at dinner or having drinks or whatever, and you're telling stories, and we'd tell them, and eventually somebody would call bullshit on us. You couldn't have done that. And of course, we just look at them like, you've had that sad of life, huh?
Right.